Welcome to Mission Oriented, a veteran crowd podcast that showcases veteran talent from both the private and public sectors. Their impact is everywhere. We are here to uncover it. Here's your host, Bob Louthen.
Welcome to Mission Oriented on the Veteran Crowd Network. I'm your host, Bob Louthen. Today, we're going to be talking about politics. I think most people in the United States right now think politics have gotten pretty partisan and ugly. There's not a whole lot of agreement on the issues, but most of us can agree that we're a nation divided. There've been a lot of calls for reform. It depends on the side that you're on. People have been wanting to delegitimize the Supreme Court or change the Electoral College. And I think this is driven on one side or the other based on results that they didn't like or a grab for power. Well, veterans have a say in this, and my guest today is Mike Cantwell. Mike is active in two groups that I'm aware of and familiar with. First is FairVote Virginia, and the second is Veterans for Political Innovation. Mike, welcome to the program. Thanks for being with me today.
Hey, Bob. Great to see you again. Really looking forward to this.
Hey, before we jump into, kind of the discussion of the day, you're a 1987 Navy grad. If you want to give a shout out to the Naval Academy, go beat Army anytime you want to. I'll throw one right back at you. But, tell everybody a little bit about your Navy career. And you've also been at the National Geospatial-Intelligence Agency for a while. So if you could just share a little bit about your background, then we'll jump into this political discussion.
Yeah, graduated in '87, was on a surface warfare officer. So I was on two different ships, did a few deployments. And then I stayed in the reserves until 2015 and retired in 2015. And I've done a lot of work in the as a defense contractor and in the government. And I really do think that veterans getting involved in politics or in reform activities is another way that they can serve.
Yeah, you kind of jump into politics yourself in 2016. I think it was sort of an impetus for you. You've run for office yourself, but let's talk about what's kind of broken. I've sort of touched on this, but what do you think's going on?
Well, our politics is really broken right now, Bob. We are really dysfunctional in many different ways. A lot of it has to do with our extreme partisanship. So, 20, 30, 40 years ago, Republicans and Democrats worked together to solve a lot of these really challenging issues, especially around national security and foreign affairs. Nowadays, it's really just a winner-take-all game, and it's really dysfunctional. So I've been involved in political reform since March of 2017. I first started with United America, which is a great reform organization. And then I got affiliated with FairVote Virginia. And within the last year, I got affiliated with Veterans for Political Innovation. All great organizations, all with, former Republicans, former Democrats, and independents. So I really encourage everybody to get involved in these political reform activities.
I really think this is a nonpartisan kind of thoughtful effort. I've seen all kinds of things in politics before, but this is the first one where I've truly embraced, objectives from people that sit on the other side of the aisle, sort of from me politically. Let's talk quickly about FairVote Virginia, and then dive into the one I know a little bit more about, which is Veterans for Political Innovation. But tell everybody, you and I are both Virginia residents. What's going on with FairVote Virginia?
Sure. So FairVote Virginia is a single issue advocacy organization. We are all about advancing ranked choice voting in Virginia. And so myself and the president, Elizabeth Melson, in 2020, we went down to Richmond and advocated for ranked choice voting laws, which actually passed. And right now we're advocating for the implementation of these laws that were passed. So in 2020, the state General Assembly allowed local governments to elect their members of their city council or board of supervisors using ranked choice voting. As of right now, no locality has done this yet, but there are several that are very close. So Richmond, Norfolk, Fredericksburg, and where I live, Arlington, Virginia, is probably the closest right now. And we hope that they submit an ordinance to the Arlington County Board within the next few months, and then implement either for the primaries or the general election ranked choice voting in 2023.
You're listening to the Mission Orient podcast on the Veteran Crowd Network. Mike, quickly explain what ranked choice voting is for those listeners that don't know what it means.
Sure, Bob. Well, first I want to start off with the why. So why would we want to implement a new way of voting? Well, ranked choice voting is known to increase civility in elections. Also brings in new candidates, new ideas into the marketplace of ideas during elections. And basically it allows voters to, go look at a ballot and then rank their first choice, their second choice, your third choice. And then, and then that is tabulated. And if no one receives 50% of the vote, then those votes are reallocated to that person's second or third choice. So what it ends up doing is candidates, as they go along the campaign trail, they may actually say things like, hey, I really want your first vote, but if you don't vote for me first, vote for me second. And that just completely changes the dynamics of our political landscape and make for more civil elections. And it also eliminates the spoiler effect. So let's say you have an independent candidate or a Green Party candidate. Many of the Democrats or Republicans could say, hey, you need to get out of the race because you're going to spoil this for the people who are, the Democrats or the Republicans. But
yeah, the most notable spoiler effect would be when Ross Perot ran and Bill Clinton won with a plurality. Forget which year that was, but
yeah, or Ralph Nader in 2020 or Jill Stein in 2016. So by implementing ranked choice voting, it will eliminate the spoiler effect. But one thing I'm really passionate about is starting at the local level, right? So I don't even waste too much time talking about the 2024 presidential election. Because so much happens at your local level, your taxes, your roads, your schools, your police. So I really encourage everybody to get involved in their local government because that's where you can really make a big impact. And in Virginia, you can advocate for ranked choice voting.
In Virginia, I understand that the Republican Party used ranked choice voting to select its three statewide candidates for governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general. And that seems to have worked out fairly well for them. And I do agree with you. It also brings civility. You said that, to the discussion, because you can't be a single item candidate, and you've got to appeal to a broader swath of the community because it's important to get that second place or third place vote. Hey, let's move on to Veterans for Political Innovation, because there's another piece of the puzzle there, and that has to do with the primary system. Can we talk a little bit about VPI and talk about the primary system and what we think is broken about that?
Sure. Let me do a little scenario here. Imagine you are a soldier or a sailor or a Marine in March of 2020, and you really want to vote in the primary elections in 2020. There were many sailors, Marines, and soldiers who got a ballot with candidates on it that had already dropped out of the race. So you would have voted for someone who have already dropped out of the race. If you had ranked choice voting, you could have said, well, my first choice is Buttigieg, my second choice is Klobuchar, and my third choice is Joe Biden. And you could have that vote would have counted. But it would not have counted if you did not have ranked choice voting.
That's very interesting. I hadn't thought about that one.
Yeah, and the same thing happens in Republicans. So just so everybody knows, ranked choice voting is currently being used in red districts, red cities, and also blue districts and blue cities. So it is completely, both a Republican and a Democratic reform. And really no side will get an advantage by implementing ranked choice voting. It's really just about the people and democracy.
It's a very sound solution. The primary system, I often hear the politicians on one side or the other, particularly in Congress, say, we need to primary that person. Let's talk about that. It's really a discipline issue, isn't it?
Well, and so if we do implement some of these reforms like Final 4 or Final 5 nonpartisan primaries, or if we implement ranked choice voting, it will almost eliminate that threat of being primary, because you'll have so many more candidates that are running for office that it really will not be effective to try to primary people, because more people will probably move to moderation, more people, active voters that are involved, usually the most extreme voters on the right and the left, and many are being left out of the political process.
Alaska is an example of ranked choice voting recently. I think it did actually temper the, although one side,
We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. So just Google FairVote Virginia and go ahead and sign up. I'm hosting some, I call them rallies for ranked choice voting here in Arlington and other places throughout the Commonwealth. So, I'm going to make another statement is I really think veterans getting involved in political reform is a way you can be twice the citizen, right? So you can get involved in reform, you can actually run for office, and you're serving your community, your state, and your country in a different way.
Hey, you've been listening to the Mission-Oriented Podcast on the Veteran Crowd Network. My guest has been Mike Cantwell. He's working hard on FairVote Virginia and Veterans for Political Innovation. We'll put out links to both organizations, and we're going to help you guys promote some of your upcoming events in the Washington, D.C. area. Mike, thanks for being on the program. Thanks for being mission-oriented.
Hey, Bob, really appreciate it, and really appreciate everything you're doing to promote veteran issues throughout Virginia. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much. This has been the Mission-Oriented Podcast on the Veteran Crowd Network, and that's a wrap.
Thank you for listening to Mission Oriented. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and you won't miss an episode. To learn more about Mission Oriented and the Veteran Crowd Network, visit us at www.veterancrowdnetwork.com.